Sounds good. The full commission meeting occurring on March 22nd, 2023 at Collinwood Recreation Center will come to order at 6:00 p.m. My name is Adriana Rodriguez, and I'm serving as the Pro Chair Tim. It is my privilege and great pleasure on behalf of the Cleveland Community Police Commission to welcome you here today. On the bottom of the agenda, you will see our vision, which sets priorities and ensures everyone is working towards a common goal. Your continued participation serves as a reminder to us all just how important this work is. Thank you to the Collinwood Recreation Center for hosting us today. The next order of business will be to conduct a roll call. Commissioner Adams?
Present.
Commissioner Benito?
Present.
Commissioner Shara?
Present.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Present.
Commissioner Early?
Present.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson?
Present.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Present.
Commissioner Reeves?
Present.
Commissioner Van Leer?
Present.
Commissioner Wong?
Present.
Commissioner Zaid?
Present.
Commissioner Ridgway?
Present.
Commissioner Rodriguez, present. A quorum of commissioners needed to conduct business has been met. The next item of business is just to do a quick overview of meeting decorum. The guidelines was passed out and they're based on Robert Rules of Order. The Budget and Grant Committee are very familiar with these, and it will help our meeting to run smoothly. I just would like to highlight a key point. A, to ensure that we raise our hands and that we wait for recognition by the chair. Item 4 highlights the fact that there are, 13 commissioners, and it's important that we all have an opportunity to speak, and that our conversations should remain respectful in nature, and that side conversations should not be occurring. Any questions or concerns? Okay, thank you so much. The next item of business is to approve the minutes. The minutes for March 8th, 2023 were distributed for your review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hence none, the minutes stand approved. The next item of business is public comment. This is your time for your concerns to be voiced, and we will listen. We will take note of your concerns, but it's best practice that we do not engage. So I just wanted to highlight that point. Would anyone like to step to the mic at this time?
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm Ms. Bickerstaff. I am the sister of Craig Bickerstaff, who was killed by police, unfortunately, 21 years ago, January 26, 2002. But I'm gonna make this really brief. I was at a Cleveland Police Review Board meeting, and I was muted by this gentleman sitting right here. I've already filed a complaint to the law director, and took the complaint to a copy to Joe Jones. I was asking a question about a person that was gonna be the administrator that was holding their job until May. And my concern was, because he has a sister that's a sergeant on the police force, would it be a conflict? Now, prior to you guys being seated, the old commission, and Charles C. can verify that, they had a 3-member candidate where they had out into the community, which was a community forum, so the public can engage. What the Cleveland Police Review Board did, they appointed this person, or they're going to appoint this person. He's going to take that position. Nobody knows anything about this gentleman at all. And that was disrespectful to mute me. Then what he said was that I was being abruptive, okay? And I was being out of order. So that's totally disrespectful. That's totally out of line. And I'm gonna say what I said in city council. I am tired of these white men in these positions that think they're going to disrespect black women, and I'm not going to tolerate it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your concern. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time?
Good evening. My name is Harold Pertel. I'm the Deputy Chief of Homeland Special Operations for the Division of Police. Just want to thank the commissioners for your service, and thanks for holding the meeting. Always great to be here and hear good things going on. So I know that my other colleagues are here, and they'll come and introduce themselves. If you have any questions for us, please let us know.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
My name is Charles C. I'm a member of the Cleveland Police Monitoring Team. I'd like to invite you all and the general public, as it were, to attend tomorrow's status conference hearing. Thank you. To attend tomorrow's status conference hearing will be at 3 p.m. at the Carl Stokes United States Courthouse on West 801 West Security. So, if schedules permit, please come out. We'll be releasing our 12th semi-annual report. And again, I want to thank each of you for your service.
Thank you. Just to confirm, because I'm not sure if that was heard, it is the monitoring status that will be held tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the Stokes Court.
Correct.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Captain Rob Simon. I'm obviously with the Cleveland Division of Police. I have been assigned and working on the consent decree since 2015 when it started. That's my primary function. I attended the prior CPC's meetings regularly, and unfortunately I was not able to attend the meeting where you met with some of my colleagues. Unfortunately, I was out of the country on vacation. But I look forward to working with you guys, and I'm going to attend as many meetings as I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jason DeFranco. I'm a captain here in the 5th District. I'm actually assigned to the support staff. Just wanted to stop up and introduce myself. If there's anything I could do to assist you, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
To the commissioners, thank you for holding this meeting. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Muriel Ricketts. And many years ago,
Can we have you step to that mic so we can ensure that we can hear you?
It's a little harder to hold, but I'll help you.
you know what, I'll try to project.
Try that. No.
We have innovation.
Hello? Is that better? Again, thank you, commissioners, for holding this meeting and the meetings you've been holding. My name is Muriel Riggins, and I'm here because I'm very concerned about what's going on with police departments in Cleveland and around the country. I was formerly with NAMI Ohio, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, and some of the police officers here, I don't know if you had training about 20 years ago on the signs and symptoms of mental illness. I trained all of the police departments in Ohio, all of the probation officers, as well as the correction officers. And the results of this training was extremely effective because it was basically empathy-centered. Police began to understand the signs and symptoms of mental illness. What I want to do is be involved with what the training might consist of. This is a critical matter, And the report yesterday from the FBI that virtually no change. Things have got to change. So, of course, a discussion at another time, but you will be seeing me around. And again, my name is Muriel Riggins. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you.
Hello, India. I am a resident of Ward 10, and perfect segue into my question here. India. I'm, again, a resident of Ward 10, and to piggyback off that question, I wanted to ask here, how are our police officers being trained to handle crisis situations, particularly those involving mental health or substance abuse? So I don't know if the commission has like an initiative to address that. Also, diversity in our neighborhoods. Just being a resident, I thought diversity would answer the question, but if you like see what's going on in East Cleveland and like across the country, some of our African American officers are having the same issue with police brutality. So I don't know, do I sit down and do we address it in the meeting, or is that a question you all can address now?
So I would say that we have the MRAC committee that is working on those types of initiatives, and hopefully we will partner with them as well to continue to support that. As you heard, that this young lady has conducted training, and we have a committee that involves with training. So this may be something that we can look further in depth. But that's just a general answer because we are new at this time.
Perhaps I can illuminate that answer a little bit, Commissioner. The police department currently is conducting crisis intervention training for its officers. They have two tracks. There's a 40-hour training that's currently going on as we speak, where there are groups of people coming in to train to identify mental illness, how you work with it to de-escalate. Autism, as a matter of fact, they spent a lot of time today talking about autism. Every police officer is required, I believe, to take an 8-hour training for crisis intervention. So it's a major focus of part of the training that's going on. So it is happening, and it's happening as we speak.
Thank you, Mr. C. In addition, also Division of Police has a corresponder model of training. In each district, we have a model where a police officer dressed in a softer uniform, polo shirt type, is paired up with a social worker, a licensed social worker, and they respond to calls for where it might be a crisis intervention, where it requires something different than a typical police response. So we're using that successfully in each district, looking to grow that program because we know that it is successful, and the numbers are just astronomically through the roof on how successful it has been, as far as going from the scene to seeking a hospital or other place, and also the extreme reduction in use of force. It is probably something like 0.004. It's a very low number, so it is very successful for us.
Any further comments at this time?
Good evening, commissioners, and good evening to everyone who is here tonight. I just wanted to invite everyone. We are doing a 4-part conversation series on the impact of police violence on the mental health of the Black community. We are partnered with several organizations throughout the Cleveland community to put this conversation series on. Tomorrow is our conversation launch. We will begin with a delve or a deep dive into how police violence and brutality has impacted the mental health of the Black woman. It is tomorrow at Towards Employment at 6 p.m. This conversation is for women only. Sorry guys, your conversation happens next month. It is posted on Eventbrite and our social media handles as well. So women, I invite you out and I hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a little bit more time, so if there's anybody else that would like to introduce themselves or provide a comment.
Good evening, Commissioners, and to the community members here. I'm Dr. Ronnie Dunn. I'm a member of the Police Monitoring Commission as well as a resident here in Ward 10, and just want to say welcome and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Since we don't seem to have any further comments, we will proceed with our next item of business, which will be our training, which will include Michael Hess, Civilian Police Review Board Chair. And then please note that from my understanding, because it is a training, that that the questions should come from the commissioners, and that I was informed that if there's questions from the community, that he has the option to address them and to please invite you to the the Civilian Police Review Board's meeting. And I'm sure he will provide more information on that as well.
Yeah, I can do that. First of all, thank you guys for having me very much. I think that there is a lot of confusion as to how all of these new systems kind of mesh together. So I'm just going to kind of go over today just what the role is of the CPRB, the Citizens Police Review Board, and OPS, the Office of Professional Standards. So I'm the chairman of the CPRB. This is a 9-member committee that meets approximately one time each month. We have meetings where we are receiving the results of investigations that are done by OPS, and we make disciplinary recommendations under the current system, recommendations that go to the chief of police, right? So out of 9 members, which we did just fully fill the board. We just I think offered a seat to a new member like today or yesterday, who I have not even had the chance of meeting yet. But our members are appointed half by the city council and half by the mayor's office. So I think that most recent appointment was a mayoral appointment. So essentially, if the process for a complaint against the Cleveland Division of Police goes like this. That will make its way to the Office of Professional Standards. There are complaint forms, as I understand it, at least they're supposed to be in all of the police buildings. Police cars are supposed to have these complaint forms that include, it will take information and then gives you instructions on how to get that information to OPS. I know that we've also had complaints that will come in to, maybe you contact your city councilman or you contact the mayor's office, and they will direct those kinds of complaints to OPS. So OPS has a full-time staff of, when it's fully operating, approximately 10 investigators. And so they will receive those complaints, and they will try to get in contact with the complainant to get a fuller version of the story, try to get more or less an interview with that person to try to understand what it is that, the timeline of their complaint and any other information that they would need to find from a third-party witness, video evidence, investigatory records, anything like that. So then the investigator will follow up on that, primarily, which has, been sort of ramping up in its implementation over the past couple of years to the point where it's more or less fully implemented at this point. Would be the wearable cameras that officers wear, and they're supposed to activate those whenever they're interacting with a member of the public. I think on the whole, the police department does a fairly good job of this. And then, you know, those videos have been tremendously helpful in the course of the time that I've been on the board, and we'll get into sort of our disciplinary recommendations later on, but a lot of these would essentially be kind of a he said, she said situation where it's like, well, the officer is saying this, the complainant is saying that. We don't have a way to determine what actually happened. If we're going to give their stories equal weight, sometimes there are scenarios where you can make a determination based on some other factor, but I guess the long story short of that is the wearable camera system has been instrumental in reducing the number of these complaints that end up being classified as insufficient evidence. We normally have enough information based on those recordings of all of these encounters to be able to say we're pretty confident that we know what happened here one way or the other, right? So that is going to be a big part of the investigations. You know, records, a lot of our complaints will center around some kind of, you know, an investigation, accusation that an investigation was done improperly or not timely. So we can go back and take a look at the records of that investigation and find out, like, were the proper procedures followed? Did you follow the detective's manual? And we can make a determination that way. And then, of course, just following up with third-party witnesses, either other officers or bystanders to any incidents that were the subject of a complaint. So that's primarily what the Office of Professional Standards does. And when they complete one of their investigations, they will come out with all of their materials, and they'll come out with a recommendation that they provide to the board. They'll once they complete an investigation, they'll put that on the agenda for the board's next meeting, and then that all of the information related to that case is going to be uploaded. We do that all digitally, so the board will receive all that information a week or two ahead of time for our meetings. And it's that point when we'll start to go through it, we'll read the investigator's analysis, and then we have access to all the information that they use to come to their conclusion as well. So we see all of the videos, we read all the reports, you know, arrest reports, any document that would be tied to that incident will make it to the board, and the board has a chance to review that before they make their determination. So during the course of our meetings then, you know, our primary objective is to get through these cases and make a determination that we can forward to the police department, the police chief. So typical case will go like this, and the complainants can attend if they wish, and we're happy to report that we're finally going to be moving our meetings back in person. We had been online for quite a long time during the pandemic, so we finally secured a spot in City Hall. I believe it's on the 5th floor. It's like a 5th floor conference room. So the investigator will present a sort of a brief version of the investigation, knowing that the board members have already reviewed all the information, right? But just to make sure that everybody is on the same page, especially if the complainant is present. You know, we've had circumstances where sometimes the investigator will present something, the complainant will say, that's kind of what I said, but like you focused on the wrong part of it or something, and then we can be like, okay, well, might have to go back to the drawing board on that one. But essentially it just gives the board sort of a baseline to ask questions of the investigator. And when you get 9 or 10 sets of eyes on the same material, sometimes certain things will jump out to certain people that they wouldn't to others. So, you know, in some cases we have had cases where the the board will kind of point something out to the investigator, and you can say, I think that you guys maybe should go back and take a look at that, because we're maybe seeing it differently than you did, or we're seeing something that you didn't see, based on our review of the documentation. So, that's an option for the board to do. The board can essentially return the investigation back to OPS to ask them to further investigate one element of it or another. And the board can initiate investigations on its own. Now, it would be pretty unlikely for an issue like that to get all the way to the CPRB, I think, without getting channeled into OPS first, right? I don't think we've ever had a scenario where somebody on the board got an email and said, hey, I have a complaint that I'd like to make. Like, there are much more available resources, I think, where they will get channeled to the correct place first. But the board does have the power to initiate those, to direct OPS to investigate something. And that will be, sometimes things will come up in those videos where we will say, hey, can you, maybe like an additional violation that we might have noticed that could be classified as a violation that we'd like you guys to investigate. So, I guess that's the bulk of it. Two things I would say are that the things that are under the jurisdiction of OPS and the CPRB are going to be non-criminal complaints by citizens against police officers or employees of the Cleveland Division of Police. So anything that could be classified as a crime, so something like a violent assault, theft, something like that, is going to go through internal affairs first before it gets to us. Now, that doesn't mean, and because one of the categories that the board is responsible for is excessive force, right? So that doesn't mean there could be a scenario where something could be at least investigated by OPS for excessive force, even after internal affairs found that there was no force that was elevated to a criminal level, right? But we could still follow up and say, yeah, but did this officer correctly apply the use of force regulations? But anything like that would go through internal affairs before it got to us. So, and then I guess as it stands right now, the board will, based on that investigation, based on our discussion, based on our review of the materials, we'll come up with a recommendation for police chief. Those are to sustain the allegation, exonerate, find that the allegation is unfounded, or find that there was insufficient evidence for the board to make a determination. So if we sustain an allegation, then we need to choose they call them group levels. There's a matrix in the disciplinary policy that sort of defines what are the levels of discipline that are going to be applied to various violations, right? And there are aggravating and mitigating factors, of course, for everything, but there's a pretty specific list, I guess, of violations of this nature will be group one. Group one is the lowest, group three is the highest. And so it can, be aggravated by things like, intentionality, I suppose. But yeah, we're kind of limited in a lot of ways we have to make that recommendation fit the violation that we would have just voted on that we found to be sustained. So, and then of course, and this will hopefully be changing pretty soon, but that will go to the chief of police, that recommendation on discipline level and group level. That goes to the chief of police, and the chief of police has the option to accept that as written, or he can alter it in some way. So if it comes back to the board, so this would be, meeting or two after we forward that recommendation to the chief of police, we'll hear back what his decision was, and the board can vote to appeal his ultimate decision, and that appeal, again, as it stands, would go to the safety director, and then the safety director's word on that is final. So that result gets reported back to the board, but there's essentially, we've written letters in the past, but there's not actually anything we can do to change that decision at that point. So that's pretty much the course of action for a normal complaint for the Police Review Board and OPS. Okay?
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Early?
Mr. Hess, is it possible you can get us a PowerPoint or some type of handout information on what you just presented? It was really scattered. It's not a criticism, but just so that we can further understand what you were really saying.
Yeah, we could do that. Just something like a flow chart. I know that this city council has asked us for that as well, and so I think that should be getting prepared by somebody, probably somebody at OPS. But I'm going to double check and make sure that that's just available. To be honest, it probably should be on our website. It probably should be on all of our websites. So, yeah, we will look into that. Thank you.
Commissioner Wong?
Thank you. I just had a question. I don't know if this was a scheduling issue. It seems that you work very closely with OPS. Is there a reason why there's not a representative from OPS here tonight?
Yeah, the OPS interim administrator he just had a personal conflict. He wasn't able to be here today.
Okay. So I just had a series of questions in reference to the consent decree. What is the average time now that it's taking to complete these investigations, your investigations?
Oh, average time. That's typically not a way that we classify it. We typically more classify it as like how many complaints we have that are how old, but that's going to be a much better question for OPS. I have a general idea, but I don't have like the numbers in front of me.
So is it, from my understanding in the consent decree on page 51, that there are two tracks for these complaints, a standard track and a complex track. The complaints in the standard track will be 45 days, and the complex track will be 90 days. And 75 days thereafter within the effective date of the consent decree, so 75 days. Are all these complaints being handled in that amount of time? Because as you can imagine, the flow of complaints probably will determine a member of the public's willingness to go through this process. And to tell you, before you were in your tenure, I went through an OPS investigation. It was during the pandemic, but it took well over a year. It was a very simple complaint. So I just wanted to know if, since this has been quite a few years since the consent decree has been here, what is the progress in making sure that these investigations are handled effectively? Does OPS have proper staffing? Or from your perspective, what are the barriers to achieving full compliance with the consent decree? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So I think that the good news on that front is that OPS is in the process of hiring more investigators. That's basically the holdup. Basically, the investigators are working on these as fast as they can. I think that they have gotten, I think the department as a whole has been improving in their performance, but we've also been receiving more complaints, and it's almost been kind of a one-to-one increase. So now they've finally gotten the green light to hire, I think, up to 10 investigators. They used to be at maybe 6 or 7 full-time, and then they're going to have some additional investigators who are just on a temporary basis. And so I think that's kind of the number one choke point. The next choke point is just that the board is primarily a bunch of people who are volunteering to do this in their spare time. So I know that it's been it's been floated to me that the board, because the board has its own backload of probably a couple dozen cases, and so those would be investigations that have been fully completed by OPS that are ready to be presented to the board. You know, the board is just limited in the amount of time that it can spend meeting because it's a bunch of people who have other full-time jobs and other responsibilities. So, you know, that's something that we kind of have to balance going forward. I think that the board members are working as hard as they can to get through these cases diligently. It takes a very long time. So I'd say that those two factors are probably the major choke points.
So you mentioned before green light to hire more investigators. Why was there a red light? I mean, what was the issue? And I do want to clarify, I think the Civilian Police Review Board is very similarly to us. We are also people with full-time jobs, and they do also get a stipend, I believe, that's similar to ours.
Mm-hmm.
And since...
Excuse me, Ms. Vaughn.
Yes.
Could you remove your mask?
Okay.
You're saying some real good information is hard for...
Sorry, I wanted, yeah, thank you. What I said was, you mentioned that they received recently green light to hire more investigators. It obviously takes time and expertise to train a good investigator. Where was the yellow light or red light before, and what was the reason? And then the other thing I wanted to say is that the Civilian Police Review Board, I believe, is under kind of a stipend situation similar to ours. I realize you guys have to go through a lot of material and videos, but what I'm asking is that, so that still can't be a reason for not being in compliance with the consent decree. What is your solution if you guys don't have enough time to deal with the backlog of complaints? It doesn't seem fair to make the community wait for a sense of kind of progress with their complaints.
Yeah, so the first question regarding the investigators, I believe that was just an issue of the way that the budget was set up. And so it was a little bit of a hard transition, I think, for OPS when they were no longer under the Department of Safety. Now, essentially, OPS and the CPRB are on their own little island as far as like being a city department, a pseudo-department, I guess. So I think that it was a little bit challenging for them to, as they're trying to set up their budget and trying to get all of the HR things, trying to get all of the IT things set up independently. I think that was one of the things that a lot of people might not have realized, that we had a bunch of investigators who were going to roll off. We were attempting to hire more because we were realizing that we did not have enough. I say we, you know, this would be the OPS, the interim directors who were in charge of OPS in the city law department. So I think that was the challenge there, was primarily a budget thing. They had not budgeted for an increase in the number of investigators. They were kind of just budgeting to replace the people who had just left. So now we're kind of getting back to the level we were at, and we're going to be able to have them add on additional investigators.
Commissioner Gary Ferguson.
So I kind of want to go back a little bit, because as of right now, CPRB, OPS, you guys have completely gone independent in HR and tech and all of those things. But when you were going through your presentation and you went through the disciplinary process, you mentioned that it's still going to the chief of police, and then that the safety director was still have the final authority. But as of 115, they no longer have the final authority. So why is it still that same setup where those recommendations are going to the chief of police, and then if there's an issue, the safety director would have the final authority, because that's not in compliance with 115.
Right.
But you guys being separate is in compliance. So I don't understand, like, why are you complying in one area and not the other?
So the issue is that the CPRB has to follow its operating manual. And we have not had a new operating manual that has been written to comply with the new charter amendment.
So the CPRB operating manual supersedes the codified charter of the city of Cleveland? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it's part of the charter.
but the charter has been changed
Yeah,
with 115.
right.
The operating manual of because we also have an operating manual. So you're saying that the operating manual of CPRB is in the city charter?
Well, it's incorporated. It's incorporated by reference.
But when we pull up, like we go and we look up the entire city charter with all the ordinances, is CPRB's operating manual, because our operating manual is not going to be in that realm. Is yours, is that what you're saying? It's going to be in that?
It's not, no, I mean, I guess it's not going to be printed word for word in the city charter, but, you know, the operating manual is what dictates what you know, it's not going to say in the city charter, step by step, word for word, how the board is going to operate now.
Okay. So it's not in that, because from what we have understanding is that the laws of the land, like if we think of like our country, we have a constitution, we have like, even in city departments, like you still have like the actual law, like the codified charter for the city of Cleveland is what we have to actually be up under. And so I guess I'm kind of confused as to how you guys' operating manual would supersede what the actual codified charter is for the city of Cleveland that everyone, every entity has to follow. I'm not like, how is that? Or is it just that it has not been updated yet?
Yeah, I mean, we're operating under the old manual. The new manual is being written, that is tied up in the consent decree. So the new manual has to be approved by, so there's 3 levels of government, right? Because there's our operating manual, and then there's the city charter, and then there's a federal court as well.
So your operating manual has to go to the monitoring team to be approved? It has, like,
The Department of Justice.
So the Department of Justice has to approve your operating manual?
The court has to approve it, but it's being written in conjunction with the city's law department and the Department of Justice.
So they're writing it together currently?
Yeah.
Do you know when they will be completely done with writing it?
I don't.
Is that something that we would find out more information about at the monitoring team status report? Like how is that going to be, like when are we going to get information when you guys' operating manual is going to be completed?
It's hard for me to say whether or not it's going to come up tomorrow. I'm not involved enough in that process to know what the timeline is.
So who are the people? Can you tell us who are so that we can get more information about following up on when you guys operating? Because it's just concerning that CPRB has already started making recommendations for several cases already since 115 has been passed, but that you guys are, in one instances, when it comes to HR and money and budget, you're operating independently, but when it actually comes to police investigations, that you guys are not operating within the city codified charter of 115. That's kind of concerning. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, who can give us more information about the operating manual and the procedures?
Yeah, it would be the city law department, but because it's part of an ongoing, court case, there's only so much that they're going to be able to provide, would be my guess.
So Chair Hess, we have a community comment from Ms. Bickerstaff.
Okay.
Are you open to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say I can speak on behalf of myself, but the board's not here, right? So I can give my opinion on things. I can't speak on behalf of the board.
Ms. Bickerstaff?
I'm just going to say this. You give a very incorrect information. Alana, you did an excellent job. That's what we want you to do. You did 100% excellent job. You drilled it. You killed it. He can't answer the questions because he's not being honest. He's not answering the questions right because he's not being honest. Myself, Citizens for Safer Cleveland and Black Lives Matter has written the court pertaining to the CRB board. And they're not supposed to be doing any recommendations or anything. They're supposed to follow under the charter 115.5 that passed November 2nd of 2021. Now let's get to the investigations, Ms. Wan. This is the issue. This is starting to be a big problem. So now what we're going to probably have to do is find out to see how far behind they are now. Because prior, before you was seated, there was 381 complaints behind. We was back and forth in court about it. They hired a group for $1 million called Hillard Hines out of Chicago, Illinois. It's an investigation firm. Okay, so we tracked that too. So what happened was they was dismissing 20 and 30 and 40 complaints every time they met. So then Judge Oliver said at one of the court status hearings, and we attend all the time, he said, why is it taking so long? Because things go stale. And what they were doing was people had moved, their numbers had changed, they wasn't getting in touch with them, and they was dismissing their complaints. So guess what? Those citizens was left being unjustified. Now, the board, we implemented you guys because there's two people, and I'm going to keep saying this. There's two lives that we have here. We have the life of the person who made the complaint. We have the officer who's the accused. They both deserve equal just cause, okay? And they're not getting it on either side. And I'm going to say that, and I know because I live this all the time. We're very engaged, and I am tired of this, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and they're straight out of compliance. And he's sitting there giving this board inaccurate information. I don't want to say a lie because I don't want to be belligerent. I'm trying to be nice. So maybe if he would pay attention to what he's supposed to do instead of muting me, okay, then he could get the things on the right track. Because I'm going to be very concerned now if they're behind. And if there are like 100 complaints behind, I'm going to be really upset about that. And we're going to get the writing to the federal judge. Thank you.
Next, we have Commissioner Benito.
Good evening. Can you guys hear it? Here we go. Can you guys hear me all right? Okay. Thank you to our community members. Thank you, Ms. Biggerstaff, for your comment. Chair Hess, I just wanted to thank you for coming today, and thank you for your work. I know I attended, or I watched the recording later of the CPRB, the most recent CPRB meeting. I recognize the hard work that you guys are doing. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I also know that we have a lot of questions, and a lot of those questions require some data, and I recognize that, there's a lot of information that you don't have, at your fingertips. So what I would like to request is that we make sure that Chair Hess receives a list of all the questions that we've asked, and then I would like to request that Chair Hess, that you can respond to us with the answers. I know that it might require some coordination with OPS to get some of those answers, but I think that these are really important questions and important data for us to have. So, and I believe that someone from our staff can help compile that, and I've also been taking some notes so I can make sure we get you that list of questions. So I have a couple questions, and would you prefer me to go one by one or to list them off?
It's probably going to work better if we go one by one.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, so the first one that I had, it's kind of going off the questions about the operating manual. So from what I understood from you saying is that the law department and the Office of Public Safety is working on your operating manual. Are any of the CPRB members working on a committee or as part of the discussion of the development of your manual?
I and the vice chairman have seen drafts of it, but we're not actively working on rewriting the drafts.
Okay. Did any members, yourself or other members, ask to be part of that and you were denied, or can you explain why the members aren't being involved in the crafting of the manual?
I am not sure about that. I think that the board would ultimately have to approve the new manual. I think we're just kind of cutting out the lengthy back and forth phase.
So Commissioner Benito, we're going to ensure that we give everybody the opportunity to speak. And if you would like, I can put you back because I know there's been quite a few people waiting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have some other questions, but I can wait.
Commissioner Early.
If I'm correct, I heard Ms. Bickerstaff state there was 381 cases that were not resolved or put before CRB?
It was, but a lot of them were dismissed. This was prior to you guys being seated.
So 2 questions I have, they're real quick. One is for us. How many cases, do you know, how many cases have not been heard by your board currently to date?
I believe that number is about 60.
About 60, okay. All right. The second question
So,
is...
so those are, I mean, again, those are cases that the investigation has been fully completed and the board has not gotten to them. And part of that is that we would be our expectation that we are hearing approximately 20 cases a month, right?
Second question, and this is more so for an educational purpose. Can you tell us what an investigator is and how they're chosen? Are they civilians? Are they from the police department? So that the community can understand what the investigator role is.
Yeah, so the investigators are, they're under the Office of Professional Standards. They are civilians, I guess, non-police. I think that a lot of them will have a background in either internal investigations, or I know some of them had backgrounds in law. So it's hard to say that there's just like a specific pipeline of how you end up in that role, but it's definitely not being in a police department, right? So that I think was part of the reason that there was a lot of interest in rolling OPS out of the Department of Public Safety, because we wanted to try to minimize that influence, just kind of being part of the safety department. So,
Commissioner Adams.
My question is about the staffing issues with OPS. In the consent decree, it basically states that the OPS should undertake a staffing analysis, and that staffing analysis, and that would help determine how many investigators are required to meet the targets. Are you aware, has that staffing analysis been done by OPS?
we've certainly, OPS has determined, you know, they have a caseload, and they know how many cases that an investigator can get through in a certain period of time. And they made a determination that they needed to get more. That's kind of how they arrived at the point that they're at now. I know that OPS is also in the process of hiring an actual data analyst. That's one of the positions that they've been trying to fill. And so I imagine that if there's supposed to be a sophisticated analysis done, that would be the person who would be doing it.
Okay.
That role has just been
Just to follow up.
vacant
So,
for a minute.
the consent decree in section 2168 states, OPS will undertake a staffing analysis to determine how many investigators are required to meet these targets. And if necessary, the city will use best efforts to expand OPS staff in accordance with the results of the analysis. The staffing analysis will be provided to the monitor, which will review it for adequacy. The monitor will advise the parties as to whether OPS and PRB's budget afford sufficient independence and resources to meet the terms of this agreement, and whether the city is using best efforts to expand its staff if indicated by the analysis. So the point of my question is that it seems like this staffing analysis is critical to providing OPS with the resources that it needs. So I think it's great that they're doing these things internally, but again, to Commissioner Garrett Ferguson's point, it doesn't seem to be fully in compliance with the documents that we have to follow. So, you know, if the staffing analysis has not been done, and your response to us was that it was the way that the budget was set up, it just seems that this staffing analysis needs to happen because there's a huge backlog, which to me means that there's something wrong with the resources that have been allocated. So I would just suggest, I would strongly recommend that somehow, some way, this staffing analysis gets done, because it needs to go to the monitoring team so that they can work with the city, because all the pieces have to work together to make sure that we are getting these investigations done under the time frame that is also explained in Statute 216 of the consent decree.
Sure. One thing I would add to that, it's possible that the intention of that staffing analysis, that might have been like a one-time thing that happened early in the consent decree. I started on this board long after the consent decree. So it's possible that that was like one of the first things that happened, and that was not, the monitors have not brought up anything like that to us in the time that I've been here. So I'm wondering if that might not have been like an initial step. Just in full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure if that.
Thank you. So we had, thank you. He would like to remove his question. We had Commissioner Zaid.
Hello. So I still really have an issue with the amount of time that is being taken with these investigations. So I would like to ask, and maybe Mr. C, you can speak to this, just about what is happening to, what are you guys doing to get into compliance with the consent decree, and what does the Department of Justice plan to do since they are out of compliance and it's taking so long? As to Commissioner Wong's point, I understand there's staffing issues, but I still don't think that that justifies a 90-day process taking over a year. So is there, can someone speak to the compliance issues and what plans to be done about it, and if the Department of Justice needs to step in and do something about that? And also would like to ask, is there anything that this commission can do to help you guys be more be successful in your efforts?
I think, well, thank you for that. You know, as far as the Department of Justice is concerned, I can't really speak for them. I would say as far as the 90-day cutoffs go, I know that OPS is working to, it's really a matter of the number of people that they have available, right? Because there are some investigations that can get done pretty easily in a few days. There are some that are very complex and require talking to a lot of people, watching a lot of video, that probably cannot get done by 90 days, certainly not by a single investigator, right? So it's, I'm not aware that there are that many cases that OPS is working on that are going over that time period that are not very complex. But I guess the danger of it is you don't want to, and which we brought up. So right at the beginning of the consent decree, CPRB stopped hearing cases. That's why there was an enormous backlog, right? Because the CPRB was not meeting, and so these cases were building up and building up and building up, and they weren't being investigated while the DOJ was doing their, I think, initial analysis, right? So that was the reason. That was the reason why the backlog was where it was, and that was the reason why we had to hire an outside investigator to do those in bulk. And the board spent a significant amount of time and effort trying to wade back through that backlog to get it back to a manageable place. So, you know, the risk of doing that is, are you getting a thorough investigation? So you've got to balance, I think, obviously you want everything to be done timely, but you don't want to push that so much that corners are getting cut in the investigations, I guess, would be the only thing I would say.
Follow up, how often is CPRB meeting now?
We meet once a month.
Commissioner Benito.
I think a follow-up to Commissioner Zayad's question, are you guys considering meeting more than once a month to address the backlog of cases?
We are considering that, yeah. I think now that we have made the move to being able to meet in person, I think that's going to change how everybody's thinking about it a little bit. So that's something that has been mentioned, and we're going to be discussing that probably at some point.
Commissioner Wong.
Thank you. So I wanted to follow up on some of my questions, and I hear Commissioner Adams' concern about the staffing analysis. Could you tell us how many, I know you're not representing OPS, could you tell us how many actual investigators full-time are working at OPS right now?
Right now, I think it's 5 or 6 now. They have a senior investigator too, who is, I'm not sure that he is full-time investigating. I think that he's also supervising the other investigators
Right.
as well.
So I think it is 5, and there's a senior investigator. How many other administrators are there that are not out in the field investigating? I just want to understand the proportion of frontline investigators that can do the work that needs to be done to expedite these cases versus the management.
Yeah. So currently there would be one senior investigator, and then the interim administrator, right? So they're working on hiring a data analyst, an administrator, and I think there's also supposed to be a general manager.
So
Thank you, Commissioner Wong. Can we please proceed with Ms. Bickerstaff? Ms. Bickerstaff?
Okay, so you just said 5 full-time? According to the paperwork, it's 17. So I'm concerned him being the chair, because the representation he just gave tonight is not showing me that he's even competent to be in that position. I'm very concerned about that as a citizen and a sister who lost a brother with police violence. And everybody in this room should be concerned with this, what we're doing tonight. This has to change. And the board, you guys are asking and engaging in very legitimate questions. And he's even stubborn even as answering. And I have a problem with him giving you misleading information. Now, I just want to correct something Mr. Earl asked about the New York Times. It was 381 cases that were pending. He indicated that they just stopped, but they was not supposed to stop. A lot of those cases was pending 3 and 4 years. And those cases was getting dismissed. So that means the person who filed the complaint and the officer didn't receive no just cause either way. So I'm going to leave it up to you, and all of you are asking some very good questions tonight. In my opinion, I think he should be removed, just based on his representation he did tonight. That's where I'm at. And I'm going to say something to the judge about that also.
Commissioner Reeves?
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. I'm glad you brought that up. You are a CPRB, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And OPS is different.
Yes.
So you really can't answer any questions we have about OPS. I mean, honestly, with knowledge.
I mean, it's not what
I
I'm
know
doing.
y'all work together, but
It's not what I'm doing day to day, right? If the OPS administrator was here, he'd be able to answer all of these off the top of his head, yeah. I'm just answering the best of my ability. Do you have the list with 17 names on it? Do you have that?
17 full-time. Don't you have that? You're the chair.
There are definitely not 17 full-time investigators that,
Well, it says 17 on here.
it's,
Total full, go ahead.
It says vacant full-time 9, total full-time 17. And this is the copy of the Office of Professional Standards budget that was submitted for this year.
okay, so that's what they're budgeted for. That's not how many people currently work there. Thank you. Sorry, I don't
Commissioner
wanna-
Adams?
Sorry, I just looked it up myself. It looks like there are 7 investigators and 1 senior investigator, but I'm just looking based on their website, so I don't know if it's up to date, but.
Then their numbers are wrong, but it still needs to be removed.
So we have Commissioner Adams.
You may have answered that may have answered the question. My question was about the changes that have been made to meet the needs. So maybe that answers the question that it's been budgeted for. I just had I do want to say, I do not envy the job that your board has to do. I've watched your meetings, and I know that just last month, you spent 2 hours on one case. So it's not a particularly easy job. It also helped me understand that when you get a case, it could be a case that could involve multiple officers and multiple. So I do want to say that I do think that you guys have a difficult job to do as well. However, I did want to ask a question, because one of the things I've noticed in watching your meetings is that you said that there's in general the police do a good job with their the body cams.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that's an issue that comes up a lot in your meetings. And what I've noticed is that when, like, you've had some instances where, like, I know that in the Antoine Tober case, there was at least one officer who, like, didn't turn their body cam on for like 100 days or something. Like, it was something real severe. And I noticed that, but then you just said earlier that, well, if we had the body cam footage, it might have helped clarify things. So my question is, why do you keep erring on group 1 violations for something that could help clear everything up for you? And that is a part of the officer's duty and responsibility and their training. And you just said that when you have the body cam footage, things are much clearer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why, if I'm an officer, and you're just going to give me a group 1, and that means that based on your meetings, they might have to get retrained, or they have to do something that's like a slap on the wrist to me. So I'm just want to know why, because I'm looking at these violations. There's all these group 1 violations. There's all these group 2 violations. Have you all discussed how to get maybe some of these more chronic violations of body cam footage? Can we move them to group 2? I'm like looking at the violations, and it looks like there are a few of these in group 2 that you may be able to apply them to. But I want to know why, if you understand the importance and the impact and the clarity that you can get on cases with body cam footage, and police are trained, like there's in group 2, there are things that have to deal with training and violations of training. I'm curious as to why you keep erring on group 1 violations for that, when it seems like that it's important, and it's something that's important to the public as well.
So essentially the answer to your question is because it specifically, it's a group 1 violation to fail to activate your WCS camera properly. And at one point, that was an issue that the monitoring team raised, was that they wanted us to try to more clearly articulate the reasoning behind why we were choosing our group levels. And so I think that the result of that is that we just are a little bit, if it very clearly says this is a group 1 violation, then we're kind of limited by that matrix. Like, we can't, and then this also is going to the chief of police next. So he's going to say, well, a group 1 WCS violation is a group 1 violation. So I think, given that it has to go through the police chief at this point, that would be the end result.
Follow up. Well, that's not the
Commissioner John, I'm sorry, we have to do Commissioner Kennedy. We are limited on time. Commissioner Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair, for joining us. Just 2 quick questions. The amount of time a CPRB decision is made to the decision from the Chief of Police, if you just have an estimate for that, that would be very helpful. And the amount of time the board's recommendations, the percentage of recommendations that are actually adopted by the chief. Do you have a sense of any of those numbers?
We've actually just asked OPS to try to compile a list of, and try to figure out what that number is. And I guess as far as the timeline goes, it would typically be a month or two before the chief sees our recommendation, and then we will, like when we get a determination letter, that will be presented at our next meeting. So that tends to be 1 or 2 months, 1 or 2 meetings, basically.
Commissioner Wong?
So as a follow-up question also to what Commissioner Adams has said, I'm a little bit troubled by earlier, I'm sorry if I misheard you, your characterization was that the police were doing a good job with the body cams, that there was improvement, but I don't know what that improvement, what that measure was from. I'm referencing an article by Matt Richmond, the reporter for Idea Stream, and it is in reference what Dr. Adams has said, that there was, in your maybe 2 meetings ago, an investigation that revealed through the Anton Tolbert case that officers were sometimes in the NICE unit not fulfilling their body cam compliance for over 2 years. I think you stated it was a little bit less. And the more troublesome thing is that there was one supervisor also not completing daily checks of the wearable body cams footage and not completing quarterly audit reports of the footage. So my question is, when you see this pattern that's so systemic and so deep, right? Hopefully, you know, we don't know, like, do you follow up with these officers to, instead of just giving them a you know, group 1 or group 2 violation, is there any, what is the follow-up investigation as to how to solve this problem, rather than just doling out punishment? I do want to mention that group 1 violations does not specify body cam. Group 2 identifies insubordination. Group 3 specifies dereliction of duty. So what, in your understanding of those violations, is the refusal to turn on the WCS or the supervisor to upload it any aspect of making sure that that evidence is properly handled, a violation of any of these grouped violations, for your understanding, since you have much more, having seen all these cases? And the follow-up is, what is the follow-up to that, other than saying this officer, this isolated officer, this one, if this, it seems like it's a systemic problem. So what is your, thank you.
So the specific case that you're referencing, that was, to my knowledge, for my time on the board, that was the first time that we had seen a case like that, where it was like, there was one unit that was systemically not using or auditing or recording, they were not using their WCSs properly, like as a group. I would maintain, based on the cases that come to our attention, far more often than not, probably nine times out of 10, I think the WCSs were used properly, and that was the first time that there was an instance like that where it seemed to be like an entire group of people who were just not paying attention to it at all, right? So the flip side of that is that these are, you know, they're supposed to be audited. If the audits are not being done correctly, that is sort of, that's not going to come to our attention unless there's a complaint about it, right? So we only see cases where somebody made a complaint and that officer happened to not use his body cam in that instance on that day, right? So it would be very challenging for the board to try to track how widespread of an issue that is. All I can say is that cases that have come to our attention seems to be far more often than not, everybody seems to be compliant with the WCS policy.
I do want to mention that 10% is a pretty significant amount, you know, if that is the actual amount. I
don't have
an
exact number for that, but
people buy insurance on a 0.01% chance of something happening. So I would hope that we, as a committee, make sure that this evidence is preserved in whatever way we can.
Commissioner Ferguson?
Yes, so I just have a question. You know who Art Boyker is, correct?
Art
From
Boyker,
OPS?
yeah,
Yes.
he's one of the investigators.
Yes, so He actually reached out about a month ago, February 15th, and said that when you, with this previous case, were making recommendations, that this information was supposed to be forwarded to the Community Police Commission. He also noted that since issue 24 and the updates in the charter, that you all were already told and was put in the loop that that information and recommendation should be forwarded to us. And I know that there's a 60 days that you guys have, and then the investigative unit has an additional 30 days. And so we just passed pretty much that 30-day mark on you guys end. But it seems the investigators that are working at OPS, they are very aware, and they have said that you guys are aware of the new charter amendment and what that entails and how you guys should be sending us the information. But I know earlier you said that because of the operating manual it wasn't, but that was what was sent to us, is that we're supposed to be receiving that information. So I really hope that by April 15th we are able to get that information, because from the investigator, that information has already been put out there. Also, for those 60 cases, can a list of those 60 cases that the CPRB is behind on, in which the investigations have been completed, can that list be forwarded to the Police Commission for us to review?
I'm sure that it can. Those would all be questions that are better directed to OPS, because I wouldn't have that list off the top of my head, but OPS would.
Okay.
And I would say, I mean, the same deal with anything that's meant to be forwarded to you guys, that's going to come from OPS. It's not going to come from like a board member.
Okay.
Commissioner Ridgway.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just take a step back, not so much as a question, but as a comment, that it is very important. When I review your operating manual procedures here, some of these questions could have been answered had your operating manual been updated. And then we wouldn't, and it wouldn't be so much guessing or assuming or estimating. We could actually refer back to your operating manual to get the information that we need. So I think it's very important that your board work to update that manual. The other reason it's important is because as we began to do our work in the Rules Committee in the second section, we are finding that some of our decisions are based on you. And if your decisions are not finalized or your manual is not finalized, we can't finalize our part either. So I think it's very important that you all go back, take the time out, and go back. And it's also critical that members of your board are serving in a capacity to review that manual. Because if the law director is not sitting at the table, if these people are not sitting at the table, it's difficult, I would think, or almost impossible for them to be definitive on what pieces and parts should be in this manual. And when I look at this, there is a statement here that actually says all provisions of the operating manual, and that's for the, for the review board, all provisions of the operating manual must be considered in a manner consistent with the charter of the City of Cleveland.
Commissioner Adams.
I just wanted to follow up again with my previous concern about the camera systems. What I'm going to say, and this is more of a comment than a question, I would encourage you to rethink how you interpret some of these violations in these groups. You can't be too literal with these things. And I feel like, it's kind of a cop-out. Because if an officer, that case that you're talking about was ridiculous. I had to go back a few times and be like, what did they just say? So, for me, if you're not turning your camera on for 100 days, if you're just not doing it, and you're just not doing it, and you're just not doing it, I'm a teacher. there are different type of students that I have. I have students that are just flat out, explicitly defiant. They'll tell you what they're not going to do, and you deal with that type of student. But there are also students that are passive-aggressive in their defiance. I will tell a child to do something, and they'll say they're going to do it, and then they just don't do it. And they never do it. They're not going to do it today. They're not going to do it tomorrow. They're just not going to do it. So for me, if you have, like, we're not dealing with children. We're dealing with grown adults who have applied for a position, who's been trained for a position, who has agreed, taken an oath to honor the duties of that position. This is an important thing that they have to do. For me, if you're just not going to keep doing it and you've agreed to do it and we're paying you and you're cashing those paychecks and paying all your bills and everything with those paychecks, then I want you to comply. At a certain point, that then moves into just flat out insubordination. So for me, I understand what you're saying. I'm looking at these group violations, but in my opinion, to me, that's like, oh, I forgot today. I forgot a couple of days. I'm sorry, my mind, there's something going on. But when it gets to like months and weeks and, you know, a third of the year, to me, it's just insubordination. So I would encourage you to look at the group violations, and at a certain point, I do think that you can move a body cam issue like that to a group 2 violation, at least. So that's why I said what I said. I just wanted to just follow up with that comment.
Commissioner Benito.
Thank you. I think one thing that I heard you describe a couple times is some systemic barriers that you were describing in response to some of our questions about the matrix of levels of violations, and also describing having to consider what is going to happen once it's submitted to the police chief in your decisions. I think one great thing is that Charter Issue 115, thank you, Charter 115, thank you, is going to allow us to tackle those issues and to address some of those systemic issues, so that I hope that we can address this. So I wanted to bring back a question that Commissioner Zayed asked, which is, what can we as a commission do to support the work of the CPRB?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, you guys have raised a lot of important issues. I think that the operating manual question is an important one. I would look to you guys to, we have been getting direction on that from the law department, and they're essentially just telling us how they are interpreting things. So if there's a way that you guys can work with them to move forward on it, that would be awesome. The way that I see this working, the CPRB has a specific role that is really just based on the amount of time that it demands from its members, really ought to just be limited to going through cases, right, and making decisions on cases. So the policy stuff, I think that the board is in a position where we can identify policy failures, and a lot of times that's going to be more like this. Something is written incorrectly in a way that maybe all of the rules were followed, but there was still a negative outcome or something, and we would make a policy recommendation to the police department for that. So we will continue to do that and try to identify issues where the CDP's policies fall short. But I guess, and again, I'm not speaking for the board, right? I'm just speaking my own personal opinion. I think that if you guys were able to focus on the policy stuff, direct the board, and kind of be the leaders on that, I think that's going to allow OPS and the board to be able to work on these cases as efficiently as they possibly can. So I think that would be, moving forward, that's what I would hope to see. I think with the with your commission and our board working together.
So we have a comment from Ms. Goldsby.
Here, you can use this one.
All right. Good evening. Thank you all. So first of all, these are the minutes that I downloaded from the CPRB board that shows that for the last year, Cleveland residents have been going to those CPRB meetings and requesting updates about the manual since the passage of issue 24. This is not nothing new. We've been hearing this since last year. They've been waiting to get their manual. The manual is still with the law director. This is an independent body. The fact that the chairs are not working on their manual, their operating manual, to me, it's a problem. It's a problem. You all are too reliant on the law department. This is an independent body. It was created that way for a purpose. We need you all to function independently. Therefore, if you had hired an attorney that was stated in the language of the charter amendment, we wouldn't be going through these problems. There's supposed to be an attorney on the CRPB board as well. Today, there was a new appointment to the CPRB. I don't know if y'all know about that, but this person was just appointed today by Mayor Bibbs. Diane Signanovich, I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong, but again, it doesn't state whether or not she's an attorney. That's a requirement. So again, if your manual were updated, you would know what the guidelines and the requirements for the CPRB would be because it's in your manual. It's also in the consent decree, which we'll hear more about that tomorrow. And I hope this questions and all these questions come up again during the hearing. But I also wanted to say that, you know, the CPRB has been meeting online. Those meetings occur at 9 a.m. Next month, they will be having their first in-person meeting, and it's going to be at City Hall. That is an inconvenience for the public. I want you to know that. It's an inconvenience for the public. People work. We cannot stop what we're doing, our lives, to show up at 9 in the morning down at City Hall to attend a community meeting. It should be done in the evening. Also, City Hall is not accessible to everybody. Everybody don't have a car. People catch the bus. So why can't you all have meetings in public like the CPRB? Like the CPC. I heard something about there was parking issues and you all were getting parking passes, but there's no parking passes for the community. We pay $5 to ride the bus, $5.50, I'm sorry, to ride the bus. Not to mention if we have to pay for parking. So I would encourage you as the chair of the CPRB to bring your meetings into the public, in public space, so the community can attend those meetings. I understand you all are worried about your safety because that came up in the meeting. But again, accessibility for these meetings is important to us because we would like to attend at a time that's convenient where we don't have to call off work or stop what we're doing in the morning to show up. So that's all I wanted to say.
That's fair. The meetings are also going to continue to be on YouTube, so you can attend them online as well.
Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that it's 7:28. With everybody's permission, this seemed like a charged conversation, if we can continue. I would like to, please feel free to comment.
I just kind of had a two-part, I don't know if you've covered this already, but the average number of cases that come in on a monthly basis for review?
The average, so monthly, I mean, yearly it's 300 to 350 cases that we intake. You're saying like cases that come into OPS for investigation?
Per month, yeah, like per month review.
Yeah, so it's about 20 to 25, I would
And
say.
then, what is the board diverse? Are there African Americans? Or what percentage of the board is African American?
Percentage.
Out of 9? Okay.
Next, we will have Commissioner Ferguson.
So I just wanted to kind of make this comment because it seems that with a lot of, there's some concern about changing some of the groupings when there's repeat offenses from officers due to there being pushback from the chief of police. However, in 115, it clearly states that you all have to act independently, not be concerned with interference from them, and the fact that this board will then be able to step in if there is those type of pushbacks from the chief of police. And so it just kind of seems that the community is not being put forth because there's so much deference being given and apprehension being given to allowing the appropriate groupings of disciplinary action against officers because of the concern with the chief of police. But within the charter, even under you guys' specific session that isn't under Community Police Commission, but under the Civilian Police Review Board, it clearly says that that should not be a concern of yours. And there are so many other things that have been put in place to mitigate if there is that type of circumstance that comes up. So I just, as we're moving forward and you guys are reviewing cases, the fear of interference from the police, chief of police, I hope that is something that you guys do not continue to worry about when thinking of how repeat offenses and the groupings for disciplinary actions, because in the codified language that is addressed, and that is another opportunity for us as the CPC to come in and support the work that you all are doing, but we can't do that when we're not giving the recommendations during the appropriate timeline, and those things are not being met. Because again, the investigators at OPS know, because they reached out to me personally on my LinkedIn to say, hey, we did this. So the fact that the chair of the CPRB is not aware of those type of instances of how that is supposed to take place is very concerning for the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Ferguson. Commissioner Ridgway?
To the chair, I just want to say that I think we need to put a pin in the discussion. I think that I need to determine how soon your operating manual will be completed. I think you need to come back before this group, along with OPS, and come back with answers to the questions that we have raised. All the responsibility should not be on you.
Yeah,
you cannot speak for OPS, in a credible way if you aren't serving on that group. So I would suggest to the chair.
Got 3 comments. So thank you so much. As I asked for extended time, I know that we have very charged, and that's why I was trying to ensure that we get multiple perspectives, because we do not want the conversation to carry on, but we want to ensure that we hear everybody's voice. We have just 3 more comments, and then we will wrap up the discussion. Thank you so much. We got Ms. Bickerstaff for your final comment.
About the way this is being handled right here today. Commissioner Ridgway brought up a very important point. Number one, if that manual would have been done, it would have been an easy breeze. Myself and Ms. Goldsby and other individuals have written them and talked to them about this repeatedly. But this is what they do. They throw it aside. But this matters because a person's rights matter. An officer matters because the officer is a part of the community just like we are. They have rights just like civilians. And we want it to be fair across the board. And you can't be fair if you don't have the tools. Commissioner Adams brought this up. You took an oath and you getting paid. No excuses. I don't want to hear it. You took an oath. You getting paid, there's no excuse. You have an obligation, they have an obligation to the taxpayers of this city. And they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So yes, I'm very passionate and I'm vocal because I lost a brother because of these deficiencies in the system. And we did what we did to get you guys on the ballot and get it passed so everyone can have their day and let it be equal, not split justice. So I'm glad you guys, I'm very impressed that you're paying attention, you're reading the consent decree, you're focused, and that's why we put you on there. We want you to be focused just on that. We want you to say the page number, the number that's in there, the number that's on there that you read it. We want you to be able to engage with the public. Know this consent decree, because as you see today, it benefits you to know that. And I thank you.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Wong.
So I know a lot of things have been mentioned here. I just want to bring it all together with maybe a philosophical point. Rhetorical question. Why are there body cams necessary and mandated on officers today? Right? I hope you can see where I'm going with this. Why is there a consent decree in Cleveland? Because there is a problem, right? There's an evidentiary problem, and I'm a little bit troubled. Earlier in your testimony, Mr. Hess, and I realize it may just be an idiomatic phrase, that you said it was a he said, she said thing. So on one point, the body cams wouldn't be here if there wasn't a problem of telling the truth from some police officers. I'm not taking all police officers in this. That is already the proof that there is an issue. Two, the only way to break that he said, she said tie is evidence. So, you know, we're not asking you not to be impartial, not to remain neutral on this, but we're asking you not to use the lack of evidence or your inability to get the evidence as a shield for neutrality. Because people's lives depend on this, both officer lives and citizen lives. I am not naive to think that every citizen that says something about an officer is telling the truth. And that is why you need to protect both of those entities. Because there is tremendous distrust, tremendous conflict. The only way to bridge that gap is objective evidence from a camera that's a third party, neutral party, because that is the only objective way that we can move forward. So I would really, you know, you have so much power like we do. We are, again, with the same stipend as you. We are all full-time working people. We have chosen to meet multiple times a month in order to fulfill our duty to the community. I assure you, I know that you spend 20 hours on, you know, for one meeting. I assure you that every single person on this committee has spent more than that in even a week. So I thank you for your service, but I want you to be empowered to use the resources and tools and the ability that you have, the leadership that you have to steer that CPRB to serve everybody in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, could I just respond to that for a second? So I guess, and I thank you, I appreciate your comment. When we're talking about, well, there was no WCS footage, so we're not sure what happened, right? That was, I was using that to illustrate, I think, how the board has evolved over the past, for the time that I've been on it. For sure, when we started, there were a lot of cases where that was the end result. We don't know what happened, insufficient evidence, right? If you look at the way that these cases are decided now, very, very few of them are insufficient evidence. We've largely done away with that. So I agree with what you're saying about evidence, but we have, you know, we have worked pretty hard, I think, to not use that as a crutch, because I feel like as the body cams were being rolled out, I think that the board had a tendency to use that as a crutch, but we tried really hard to not do that anymore. But thank you.
Commissioner Donaldson, and this will be the last comment.
Yeah, really quick. Just wanted to clarify something. So earlier when we were talking about the manual, you mentioned that, if I heard you correctly, you mentioned that it's being tied to an ongoing court case. Can you elaborate on that?
That's the consent decree. So anything having to do with so our manual and a lot of other tangentially related things essentially have to be approved by the court as part of the consent decree before they can be incorporated into the city government.
Okay. So because she haven't spoke, this will be the last comment. Ma'am.
Thank you. I am new a little bit to this, so I apologize for my ignorance, but I'm trying to get a sense of how much leeway you really have when it comes to this body cam footage question of the different tiers that that it would fall into, and is there any? I'm wondering why more leeway seems to be given on those. What the motivation would be behind that? If there is discretion, it sounds like there's some discretion. So I'm just trying to get a sense of. It sounds like, a choice is being made there. It's not quite so explicitly expressed as you had mentioned earlier. So I'm wondering from your angle, what is causing you to go lower, I guess, with the sentence isn't the right word, but, with the tier
Discipline.
that you choose. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a good question, right? So basically everything that the board does ultimately is going to come under scrutiny from the monitoring team in the Department of Justice. So we have to justify the things that we're doing to them, right? So when we have something that's as clear cut as this was the violation and this is the group level that is attached to that, it is difficult to justify why you were departing from that, right? So it's just a matter of, we are following the rule as closely as we can to the letter. I think that there are circumstances where, we did, as far as designating that case as a group one, I think that we recommended actual retraining for that, where that's normally just a letter of reinstruction, and that was for the entire unit. So that is, within a group one, I think that's about as much discipline as we can recommend for that.
So
does that answer your question?
Thank you so much. We're going to wrap up this session. We appreciate all the questions to ensure that our communities are safe and that we're moving this work forward. The next item of business is our committee reports. We will hear the report of the Internal Training Committee given by the co-chairs, Commissioner Ferguson and Commissioner Early.
So this will be a quick update. So we are on track. Saturday, March 25th, that's this Saturday, guys. We have a full day of training. Jason can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's taking place at our CPC headquarters, right? On the 25th?
That is correct. For the legal training this Saturday
Yep.
is the 25th, and it is confirmed. So we will have a team from CSU Law there covering almost all the topics that are in that legal training section that you all approved in your committee.
So that's great news. As long as we all show up, we will pretty much be done with all our legal training for that one block. April 22nd, police policy training. I believe that is the one in which there's going to be a mixture of online setup, the online learning system that the officers use. Should be getting access to that prior to that training. So that one is there. And then it looks like, and someone from the Rules Committee can correct me with this one, is that the safety director and the Cuyahoga Prosecutor's Office, you guys have invited them to talk about the Brady and Giglio list and officer integrity, and that's supposed to happen either March 27th or April 6th. I don't know if either of those dates have been confirmed since then.
I was under the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, because we're still trying to get those dates, that they were coming to the Rules Committee first. Is that what is happening,
Yeah,
Jason?
to the chair, to the commissioners, yes, at least the Department of Public Safety Director, Mr. Kerry Howard, has agreed to appear and bring staff to discuss what the Department of Public Safety does regarding Brady Giglio. We are still working on a confirmation from the prosecutor's office. However, I did get a phone call from Mr. Michael Malley himself, and he said he is committed to sending staff and is going to follow up to also talk about what the county prosecutor does as well.
And what date is that?
So right now, Director Howard has confirmed for the next Rules Committee meeting on, which is the 27th off the top of my head, which is next Monday. So other commissioners are obviously welcome to attend and sit in on that, even though, you know, we already know through the rules you can't participate in the business, but you can attend.
All right, so we have, those are the dates, March 25th, March 27th, and April 27th, April 22nd. Those should all be on our calendars.
Thank you. Next, we will hear the report of the budget and grants given by Co-Chair Adams.
All right, to the chair, I will keep this brief. So essentially where we are in the last meeting, I think we kind of talked a lot about sort of, there was a lot of discussion about the types of grants in addition to the amount of that we would reward for the grants. So I think Commissioner Kennedy made a suggestion that we had the categories. You were going to do the starter, the operational expansion, sustainability grants. But then Commissioner Kennedy made a really good suggestion that we could use that categorization as sort of maybe a suggestion or a framework that they could use. But if people wanted to come in maybe with like something that maybe was a little bit outside of those, that we would be open to that, because again, the goal is to make sure that the grants are going to be accessible to as many parts of the community that's doing good work as possible. So we had a discussion about that, and then I think the bulk of the other part of our topic that took up a bulk of our time was the idea of how much to reward for the grants. The Chief Ethics Officer, Delonte Spencer Thomas, was at the meeting, and I'm not sure, Jason, if we got the actual, speaking of the devil. Oh, man. But I'm not sure if we got the decision, but we were waiting for a decision on the approval needed for anything over $50,000 by the city council. So the law department was, because the charter is not explicit about if we would be different in terms of the city council. It was confirmed. Okay, I didn't see that. I just got back into town like a couple hours ago, so excuse me if I'm a little behind on a few things. So so we talked about that, and so there were several discussions that we've had about how do we deal with that. The question then becomes, I know that my concern was the independence portion. I'm concerned that if the commission is independent, and I think that that is the true spirit of the charter, I will go on the record, I do not agree with the law department's determination, because I feel like the spirit of the charter should be what we use to kind of filter things that are not stated. And it's very clear in the charter that the independence of not just the commission, but OPS and the CPRB is up. It's like top priority. So for me, if we have the program where we're doing the discipline piece, and then we are also, the other big part of it is issuing the grants to the public and monitoring those, if that's half of what we're really doing, to give the city council a way to deny us to grant the money as we see fit, it seems to undermine the independence that is the spirit of the charter. So, but that's where we are with it. We can talk as a group, but we would have to decide if we want to challenge that determination. So, there's been talk with commissioners about, we're for the accountability. We just don't want it from city council. So if we could have another entity, some accounting firm, somebody else that could help with the accountability piece, I know that I would be comfortable with that. But that's sort of where we are on that. So I think where we sort of ended on that piece, because I do think that we are all in agreement that we want to keep our independence and that we actually do want accountability to monitor the grants that we have. So we may just err on the side right now of $49,999,000 or just $50,000 on the dot and nothing exceeding $50,000. But we also talked about that we want to make sure that we're available to the community and that the community gets what they need. So there may have to be exceptions, and there may have to be a case where if there's a group that we do need to give more than $50,000 to, then they will have to be warned ahead of time that dealing with city council might slow up that process. So they will have to be aware of it. So that's just kind of where we are right now. I don't want to take any more time. I know that we're kind of running short, but thank you.
Thank you so much. We will hear the report of the Rules Committee given by Chair Wong.
Hi, thank you. Before I get into, because it's already been covered, I did just want to take the opportunity with the officers in the back, and given that we have people from the mental health community here, is there any way that we can take that training alongside the officers or in a different circumstance? Is it virtual or is it in person? Is it a combination? Yes.
What we can do for you.
That'd be great. So we all understand where everybody is. That'd be very appreciated. So the update from the Rules Committee is that we went through 3 more sections of the administrative processes and procedures, the draft administrative procedures. We already talked about the Brady Jiglio list. That is a list of that is supposed to be maintained according to the charter of officers that have potential bias or issues in their own character, and that is a public list that we have been mandated to keep. So they should be excluded in certain regards. We are going to speak to Carrie Howard and Mike O'Malley, as Jason has stated, and that meeting is on the 27th. We also spoke about public speaking, commentary, and media relations, as well as the expenditure approval and budget oversight, which is where we also saw that with the 50,000 cap on our budget expenditures. So these are still, I think, what we, from my memory, correct me if my other committee members, we were just going to continue speaking about these issues. There were a number of things that we could not finalize, and we will move on to other portions of Section 2. Are there any comments from my committee members? Oh, Manito.
Thank you, Committee Chair Wong. I think the one thing that I'll just add is there was a discussion that we will, once we complete a section, that we will bring it to the Commission for approval. We won't wait until we have the entire section the way that we did for the bylaws. So once we finish a particular section, which we did not do this last time because we have some additional questions about the Brady list, that then those sections will be brought to the Commission.
Thank you. We will hear the report of the hiring committee given by Chair Donaldson.
Hello, nothing to add at this point from the hiring committee.
Thank you. Next, we will move to the ad hoc committees. We will hear the ad hoc report from the nomination committee given by co-chairs Kate Kennedy and Commissioner Donaldson.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I will first start by saying that Commissioner Kennedy and I were tasked to be a part of the ad hoc co-chair nomination committee. And so our process was to speak with each commissioner individually in order to determine their interest in being a co-chair and to also get recommendations or suggestions on how they thought the process should go. But ultimately, we decided what the process will be. So I spoke with 6 of the commissioners, and then Commissioner Kennedy spoke with 5 of the other commissioners, and then she'll go through the process that we decided on.
Thank you, Commissioner Donaldson. It was a pleasure working with you. Thank you, Commissioner Ridgway, for charging us with this task. Good evening, everybody. So as Commissioner Donaldson said, these rules are first and foremost consistent with the Roberts Rules of Nominations and Elections, and secondly, are based on a consensus of the feedback that was provided by each of these individual conversations. These conversations were confidential, one-on-one phone conversations, because we wanted to take everybody's temperature. So I'm going to go through how this process will work right now. So, okay, oh, I'm sorry. Firstly, the commission is going to elect 2 co-chairs. Those co-chairs will be equal in responsibility, right? Secondly, the election will be on April the 12th. The election of the co-chairs will be on April the 12th. So the election will be taken by an anonymous ballot. We will provide these ballots. The format of the ballots are actually in the Roberts Rules. So we will provide the ballots to each of the commissioners. You will be voting anonymously. So we'll be voting anonymously. You don't have to tell anybody who you voted for. And you'll be voting for your 2 preferred co-chair candidates. The candidates will not be running as a slate in terms of 2 candidates running together. Everyone's going to run individually. So the 2 candidates with the most votes will become the co-chairs. In the event of a tie, there will be an immediate runoff where we will run those ballots again. After everyone has voted, 2 CPC staff members will tabulate the votes. Then they will place the ballots into an envelope that Chair Donaldson and I will review after the meeting to triple check the results. So in conclusion, after this process is completed and after that meeting is adjourned, those 2 co-chairs, their term will begin on the evening of April 12th. Thank you.
All right, and then before I present the slate of commissioners who are interested in being co-chairs, I first want to encourage my fellow commissioners to reach out to those who are on the slate to speak to them about their visions and their platform, you know, if you have those questions. And then I will also say that the chair, Chair Rodriguez, will be also opening the floor for nominations as well. So.
Can I jump in? Okay, so the meeting will now open for nominations. Oh, please prepare the slate.
All right, so for the slate of commissioners for the co-chair position, we have Commissioner John Adams, Commissioner Chandra Benito, Commissioner Gregory Reeves, Commissioner Jan Ridgway, and Commissioner Terry Wong.
I believe we have a question.
Kate, I have a question. So there is not a ranked choice voting? This is
Not
just-
ranked choice voting.
Okay.
And there will be no speeches. So the time between today and April 12th is the opportunity for each commissioner to connect with the candidates to ask them about their priorities and their vision for the commission. But we will not be doing speeches.
The floor yields to Commissioner Donaldson.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, so the chair yields to you the floor,
Yes,
so you can continue. I just wanted to ask that, have that question answered.
thank you. All right, so that was the slate of nominees.
Thank you. The committee nominates Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Beto, Commissioner Reeves, Commissioner Ridgway, Commissioner Wong for the co-chair positions. Now nominations are open from the floor. Are there any future nominations for the co-chair role? I think I would like to nominate myself. Thank you. Mhm.
Second.
Can I make a point of clarification, Chair? If you're interested in the co-chair position, nominate yourself now, because you will not be able to do that on the 12th. So speak now.
Since we do not have any further nominations, can the committee please present a motion to officially close the nomination with the names and the candidates for the record?
Second. Oh, first motion.
So I would say I move that the nomination committee accept the slate of Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Benito, Commissioner Reeves, Commissioner Ridgway, Commissioner Wong, Commissioner Rodriguez to be on the ballot for nominations to occur for the election on the April 12, 2023. And then if we can have a formal second.
I second.
Any question or debate at this time? Hence none, the motion carried. And the nominations are officially closed. The next item of business is committee interest.
Hello. First, I would like to thank Commissioner Ridgway for charging Commissioner Chura and I with this role. So we sent out a survey, anonymous survey last week just to gauge interest and preference regarding the 6 standing committees. First, I would like to say thank you to Ryan Walker. He is our senior policy analyst for his assistance with sending out that committee interest survey. So based on the responses from that survey, I have really great news that each commissioner will be able to be placed on the committee that is their first choice. I would like to thank all the commissioners for trusting us in this process. Myself, Commissioner Chura, and Ryan. With that being said, we're going to move forward with the next phase, and I'm thinking that will kind of go in line with choosing the chairs, because that will eliminate 2 people from the committee process, joining a committee. But the next phase would just be a series of brief conversations to go into detail with each of you on your interests and your choices so that we can place you in the appropriate committee. Commissioner Chura and I look forward to talking with each of you individually, and if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to us. Commissioner Chura, do you have any comments you would like to make?
I'd just like to say thanks to Senior Data Analyst Walker also. He made our job pretty easy.
Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, is there any new business? Hence none, we're going to proceed. Oh, sorry.
I'm going to present as new business, again, to the chair and to the commissioners. I apologize for my ignorance. This was my first meeting. I'm certainly learning a lot. And what I'm looking for is an opportunity, as I said, to engage more fully, specifically in the training of the police officers. I apologize again for not having these for everyone. This is, can I just take a moment to just share some of the comments where the training was done. The first comment is, with no doubt, this training for the...
I want to turn to the camera, too.
Oh, hello, camera. With no doubt, the training for the state, county, regional, community correction and the Court of Common Pleas has provided each individual with a better understanding of the plight of the mentally ill. and that's from Craig Prysock, Deputy Director of Stark County Regional Community Correction Facility. And there are other comments. In other words, I wasn't just talking off the top of my head, but if I'm allowed to bring more information at the next meeting to have each of the commissioners informed. Again, this is something that when I did this training, it was funded by the Ohio Department of Mental Health because of the mental health crisis. And where are we now with mental health crisis? In the same place. So, oh, camera, sorry. So that's all. I'm looking for help to get to where I need to get to, but I'm not going to stop till I get there. Thank you so much, Commissioners, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to working more with you. Any further new business? Commissioner Reeves?
I just have one quick comment. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank everybody that emailed, text message, inbox me. The support that you all shown me this past week means everything to me. I just want to say thank you to everybody that got my back.
Thank you. I believe it was somebody over here. Did I mistake? Okay, I might have looked from the side. Oh, okay. Commissioner Ridgway.
I just want to nominate Commissioner Wong for the next Chair Pro Tem.
I'll second.
Sounds good. We have Commissioner Benito.
I can wait until that business item is done. Then, is there anything else that needs to be done on that?
Okay.
Then
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So we have a motion on the floor. We have that Commissioner Wong will serve as the chairperson. Is there any debate or discussion at this time? Hence none. Motion carried. Commissioner Benito.
Thank you. I just wanted to report out that, so as, I can't remember who mentioned it today, but there is the MRAC, which is the Advisory Committee on Mental Health response, and I did attend the meeting that was, I believe it was a week and a half ago, and I just wanted to report out that they are meeting now quarterly. They're having quarterly meetings that are open to the public, and I asked that we be sent the information about that meeting, and I also shared with the with MRAC about some of the ways that we will have some collaboration and oversight with, especially they were talking about training of the police department and the person in the Department of Public Health. So this MRAC used to be under the Adams Board, which is the county Board of Mental Health, but it has now moved under the County Public Health Board. And I did receive an email request from the person from the Department of Public Health who is facilitating those meetings, asking for a meeting, and so I just wanted to, I'm happy to take the meeting and then report back since I attended the MRAC meeting, but I also am happy to pass that information along, or I can also send an invitation out to any other commissioners that would like to join that meeting. But yeah, I wanted to wait until we had our meeting before making a decision about that, but I just kind of wanted to let everyone know that the biggest thing that came out of the meeting, since it was the first time that MRAC had met since moving, was that they are going to be meeting quarterly instead of monthly. They are still working on forming their subcommittees. The subcommittees will be meeting monthly, and I asked whether those meetings would be open to the public and didn't get a clear answer on that yet. So yeah, just what I wanted to report back.
Thank you. Commissioner Ferguson.
So I was just notified by a community member, so do not shoot the messenger, but in August of 2019, the Supreme Court of Ohio ruled that a public body cannot have secret ballots. So I think that those who are in charge of that process should ask whoever is our legal representation. I just got informed and someone just asked a question. They just said that they sent me the article and was like, hey, this is, and so I just wanted to bring that up, and I don't know.
So the process that we modeled our process from is from Robert's rules. So we'll be sure to check with the law department to see what we're mandated to do, and we'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Van Leer.
Yeah, just to the chair, I was actually looking at this because it rang a bell for me, and the Ohio Sunshine Manual says precisely that, and we are governed by that as an open meeting. So I was going to point that out after the meeting, but now that it's out there,
we legally can't.
So we'll do whatever the state mandates and figure out how to do ballots that are not secret, and how we need to share that with the public if that's what we're mandated to do.
Okay, so we have no further business. So I'm just going to do a quick closing statement before adjournment. Again, we want to thank everyone for taking the time out your busy day and your schedules to be here today. Additionally, for the time and commitment that each commissioner, staff, advocates, and past commissioners gives to moving this work forward. Please remember that you're the key to our success. And since there is no further business, the meeting will stand adjourned. Thank you. I know, I forgot to do in the beginning.